Hello, everyone. I'm Marcus.
And I'm Charlie, and this is the Mood Booster podcast.
In this podcast, Charlie and I sit down and we discuss any and everything we go through in our lives. Importantly, the highs, the lows, and everything in between to find the joy in the everyday.
Exactly that. We're not here to preach, just here to connect, reflect, and hopefully give you guys a little bit of a lift wherever you are.
Yeah, you can expect stories that spark something, science that makes sense, and just a conversation between two friends that feels like you're catching up with an old companion on a long walk in the countryside.
In this episode, we reflect on burnout. It's an interesting one, isn't it?
It is indeed. I really get into it in this one. We go through lots of different sort of theories and scientific evidence, and just our understanding from an academic perspective, I guess, on what burnout is, but then also how that links to our understanding and our experiences with burnout.
And then possibly how we can also maybe recover from burnout, or how we can see these symptoms of burnout and maybe recognize it easier. It's a fantastic episode. Hopefully you guys love it. Let's boost some moods and let's go.
Let's do it.
Hello, everyone.
Buongiorno.
Welcome back to the Mood Booster podcast.
Episode
12.
12.
Episode 12.
12. How are we here?
3 months in.
3 months.
Oh my word.
Congratulations. Cheers to that one.
Cheers to that with our mint teas.
We'll do a silent cheers for the sake of the audio listeners.
There we go.
As opposed to the visual listeners.
Wow. The visual listener. Guys, if you're a visual listener, let us know.
Already saying stupid things 2 seconds in.
Stupid Dobby.
Stupid Dobby.
Wow, 3 months.
Yeah.
What a roller coaster of emotions.
It's been a roller coaster for 3 months.
Wow.
From the 27th of March, 24th of March?
24th of March, 24.05.
0.03.
From 03, sorry. From
Yeah.
God, that was May.
We're in May.
Oh, we're in May now. Okay. Well, happy 3 months, everyone. Welcome back.
Happy 3 months.
We're here. Today, we're speaking on burnout.
We are.
An interesting topic. It was recommended to me by Felix, actually.
Your brother.
He recommended us to talk about burnout, so I thought it'd be a very interesting topic.
Thank you, Felix.
Yeah, for you guys who don't know, my job is in sales, so burnout is quite frequent in sales, quite common.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's something that we both can speak on a little bit. I know you've just worked extremely hard with your PhD as well, so yeah.
I have a doctor before my name, so I think I don't need to. That says everything about the potential, the history of potential burnout in my life.
Exactly that.
However, we'll be speaking about our experiences on that and our personal thoughts as we do.
Yeah.
I've got my trusty iPad today.
Look at that.
Yeah. I was inspired by your notepad when we were speaking about the ocean.
My
and I was
trusted
like,
journal.
let me bring some notes. So I've got some notes, all from the memory. I just wanted to make sure I could just have some points to rely on. Mainly the names, because I'm rubbish with names.
You're bad with names.
Well,
You forgot my name until about 5 months in, didn't you?
Toby?
That's it. Close. Michael.
Michael.
Hi,
Michael. Nice to meet you. I'm also at M, but Marcus.
Oh.
Yep.
Marcus.
Some people call me Margaret.
Margaret.
Yep.
Marcus.
Backstory to that. Basically, shouldn't have been, but watching Little Britain as children.
Did you actually?
Not children, like whatever, teenagers, whatever.
Yeah.
And my brothers, I'm the youngest sibling, as we probably know by now. If you don't know, I'm the youngest sibling of 4 brothers.
Yeah.
The scene, Margaret, in the puzzle shop, you know?
I'm actually not familiar.
My brothers...
Come Fly With Me was more my time.
Okay, well, anyway, my brothers just looked at each other. Margaret, he's going to be called Margaret. So for the rest of my life now, my brothers, namely George and Charles, call me Margaret. Yeah, so either Marcus or Margaret, take a pick.
I'll take Margaret.
Or Marky if you're my mum. Hi, Mum.
Hi, Mum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, before we go on to
Michael and Margaret. Yeah.
Michael and Margaret.
Sorry.
And talking about burnout, how was your week, Margaret?
My week. Okay, that can't stick.
Guys, type Margaret in the comments if you want him to be called Margaret forever.
We're not sticking with that. I should not have said that.
Guys, type a fat Margaret in the comments below if you want him to be Margaret forever.
My week. My week. Oh, great. Oh, sorry, but I don't know why I just did a U and went high pitch there. We both had, but I guess it's the highlight of my last 7 days since last recording. Our dear friends, Jay and Lucy, are engaged to be wed next July.
Congratulations, Jay and
2026.
Lucy.
And we went to their engagement party over the weekend
Did.
in the New Forest. The New Forest is one of my favourite places, not only in this country, in the world. It's a tonic for me, being down there. I love being down there.
It's what?
A tonic.
A tonic. Oh, a tonic.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, like a medicine.
A tonic,
makes you feel
yes.
better.
Like gin tonic.
Yeah, if you're that way inclined. Don't mind a G&T every now and again.
Yep.
So it was not only nice, obviously, being down in the New Forest, but really it was just lovely. The group of friends, we were all there together having a lovely time. It was just so nice seeing Jay and Lucy be there, all of their family there together, friends, everyone coming together. They are being very extra about this wedding, as they should be. All power to them. Jay, sleepless nights the second they got engaged, trying to find wedding venues.
Really?
Stag do is over a year ahead of the wedding.
Yeah.
But we love them for it. So the engagement party, well, yeah, engagement parties are great. That's the first one I've ever been to.
Same.
And it was just so nice. Just any excuse for a party, hey? Camping out in the garden, one of my favourite activities. I love camping, even if it's just in a garden. So, yeah, had a lovely weekend. And it was really nice, actually.
Yeah.
I miss Joe and Lucy a lot because don't get to see them as much, and they're some of my closest friends. Some of my dearest friends, and Jay had a drink or two, and when he has a drink or two, or thrice, or more, he loves to show love.
He does.
He loves to show love.
Big love.
And I love to feel love, and I love when my friend Jay, well, sometimes actually that's a lie. Sometimes I'm like, please, can you stop? Because I get uncomfortable about it. But for some reason, on this occasion, it was just really nice being able to catch up with him and just share affection and show love to each other. And he was talking to you and I for over a couple of hours, I think, about this
talking
podcast.
To and talking at. I think
talking at,
using to change of
dialogue, monologue. Who knows? I know, but it doesn't matter.
We know.
Kept being like, okay, Jay, you've spoken now. Can we speak? Then you'd start speaking, then you'd interrupt. Okay, you've had your turn. It's now our turn to speak.
Jay, hand over the toy. It's your time's done.
But in all seriousness, he was so passionately giving us feedback about this podcast and what we're doing and how it's going, but being so sort of, doing it so gingerly and nervously about it. And I just kept saying to him, and I know he needed some drunk guidance and reassurance, but I just kept saying, this is the best. He was worried about upsetting us. I was like, this is the opposite of upsetting. You're showing how much you truly care and are passionate and supportive as a friend. Not only do you listen, because I don't expect my family and friends to listen.
No.
Everyone's busy. This isn't everyone's cup of tea, whatever. But not only does he listen, he's like critically thinking about it to try and support us and see how it could be better. And not only is he thinking that, he's then telling us. It doesn't matter how many people have done it, but he's someone who's done it, and it's so nice to have that and have him spend 2 hours giving us feedback, all while being worried about upsetting us. I was like, you're literally doing the opposite of upsetting me.
We love you for giving
it
us
shows
this
how
sort of
much he
advice.
cares, and I don't expect that from everyone, whatever, but just in that instance, it really warmed my heart, and I felt so supported and so like validated by that, and it was really nice.
When you see these sort of online things saying make sure your close friendship circle is a really, really good one or a really, really healthy one, it's not just about having, friends who are always yes men or yes people. Surrounding yourself with people like Jay who will actually tell you the truth is often what I know for this is what we're wanting. To hear the raw truth. The fact he's listening anyway, as you've just said, is brilliant. So the fact he can also come with a lot of love and kindness and still say, but I think it would be even better if you did this, out of a place of wanting us to be better. It's invaluable, and it's so nice.
Yeah, it was really lovely. So their engagement party was wonderful. Had a lovely time, and
thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
I've been met like 5 times, but they're some of my closest friends now. So
you're on the VIP wedding list.
Oh my god,
stag do,
brilliant,
officially invited.
I'm looking forward to it. It's be a wild couple of nights.
It's gonna be a great time.
Yeah.
Great time.
So
that was my week.
Good.
How are you?
My week. My family received some sad news this week. My nana passed away earlier this week. It was a long time coming. It's been one of the situations where my mum described it really well as it's a bit of a roller coaster going up and down, but it's one that is going to crash at the end. So just being on it is quite a tiring experience. And so yeah, she passed earlier this week. So it's been a bit of a strain on my whole family and myself included. I won't speak on it loads now, but it's just important to mention because a lot of what we speak about is the highs in life. You know, the exciting trips we're on, the adventures, the holidays, these great feelings, also the lows as well. And whilst I'm not going to be going into a lot of detail about the way I'm feeling, we probably will at a later point. It's still important to notice that not every week's a good week, or an amazing week at least. The good side of being able to spend some time around my family, but still, it's been a bit of a tough week. But yeah, here, glad to be here still. Also went to the engagement party on the weekend, which was lovely. So that was a nice weekend. But the actual week itself has been tough, but that's also okay, as we always talk about.
It is okay.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing firstly, but
it's fine.
yeah, um, just very sorry that that's what your family have gone through. We're here now, and we're going to have a nice conversation
Of
as
course.
decided.
Yeah,
Burnout.
something burnout. I think something that's a bit apparent. I know I mentioned that I've been in sales for a while now. So I went back to work yesterday, the day after finding out about my nana. And I think after I came back yesterday, I was so tired. And something I've not realised is handling work around big events in your life, like, someone passing, how much that can lead to burnout. So whilst I was working during the day, I got back and just felt so empty and so tired. I was just, whoa, it was massive weight on me. So
Mm,
I think it's important to speak about burnout.
yeah.
Yesterday, I think I might have felt it as well.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it just, I guess for the listener, you won't mind me
Yes.
saying, I think
Please.
obviously, like you said, this is something that maybe in the future we'll talk about. We'd
Yeah.
planned to speak about burnout already.
Yeah.
As you said, Felix had mentioned and recommended.
Yeah.
I think it was just something that we naturally, and you importantly, this week is guided by what feels right for you. Felt like we just wanted to kind of carry on and feel like a bit of
Mm.
normality and feel like that was okay.
Yeah.
And in the future, I say in the future, when I feel that it's right, want to talk about, the loss of my dad and things, and
Mm.
maybe likewise you will want to do the same in the future. But for
Yeah.
now, it's not sort of masking or whatever. You're very much processing and speaking to the people you need to speak to.
Of course.
We just want to have a nice conversation, speak about
Mm.
burnout, which is still serious and
It's an important
quite
topic.
quite quite challenging.
It's an important topic indeed.
But yeah, just to carry on a little bit,
Of course.
right?
Of course. Of course.
Yeah,
Exactly
and
that.
we're
Yeah.
gonna do that, and we're gonna have a good time.
We are
Yes, we are.
burnout.
Yeah. So,
Burnout. It's probably important we try and define burnout for people who might not know what it is. Mm.
oh, here's something I made earlier. What do you see burnout to be from your perspective? I feel like we should talk about what we feel like it is, and
Yeah.
importantly for me, actually, I mentioned this to you earlier. Sorry to sort of jump straight in.
Please jump right in.
There's lots of things, especially now, made accessible through sharing information on the internet,
Yeah.
where we have terminology and verbiage available to us. So we use terms like burnout, or another example that sort of from my education, research, and background sometimes irritates me when used incorrectly is things like, oh, it's my OCD playing up.
Yeah.
When people are talking
My
about,
ADHD.
yeah, it's my ADHD. I
Yeah.
can't complete a task, and we're talking about a debilitating disorder that severely impacts and impairs someone's life. Another thing being gaslighting. Now everyone just uses it as a colloquial term whenever you're in an argument with a partner or a friend. Oh, they're gaslighting me because they don't agree with me.
Yeah.
Gaslighting is a very specific form of abuse that comes from a very specific historical, actually, event of one abuse case. And burnout, somewhat similar. It is not necessarily a medical definition. It's not a medical disorder, but it is even recognized by the World Health Organization as a phenomenon. The World Health Organization.
Who?
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 Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying because I messed up my word. Flip. Second time I've been
You've
punked.
been absolutely punked there.
Shall I just leave now? Okay. Anyway,
That's boosted my mood. I'm fine.
I wanted to acknowledge. I'm glad. I don't know why I've got red.
Like a carrot.
It's hot in here. Oof. Yeah, so it's something that we are going to talk about.
Yeah.
But I also didn't want us to, and I know you didn't either, to sort of speak about it flippantly as if it's just being tired or just being stressed. I wanted to acknowledge that it is
Of
actually
course.
a phenomenon that is classified, and there's been decades and decades of research into actually defining and classifying what it is. But
Yeah.
what do we? I don't know. How do you
How do I
have you
envision
experienced it?
burnout?
What do you? Yeah.
So it was quite interesting. Yesterday, we actually did our street interviews before this episode recording,
Yeah.
which is something we've done previously. If you guys are watching our Instagrams and our TikToks that we put out, usually we release our episode on the Monday and the street interviews come out on the weekend of that week because we usually
Street interviews being.
these street interviews, sorry about that. Yeah, these street interviews being where we go out to the streets of London and ask people about the topic of that week's episode. So, for instance, we recorded the episode on role models. A couple of days later, we went out to the streets of London asking people about their role models.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, for this week, we actually spoke to people about burnout yesterday. So, before we're even having this conversation, something that's quite nice usually about speaking to people after the episode is saying, we came to that same conclusion, we came to that same thought, and that's about it. You know, it's quite nice that we actually can recognise that everyone has these universal thoughts. Oddly enough, there was a girl called Florence yesterday who I interviewed,
Yes.
I think, just asking her about burnout, and she put it in such a good way. It resonated quite a lot. It was that burnout comes at the point of when you feel like you don't have agency or control over the
Autonomy.
work that you're doing, or autonomy over the work that you're doing, and it starts to be work that you feel like you're being forced to do, essentially. So let's take it with my sales role. For me, I would say I begin to feel burnout when those extra hours I'm plugging away at the end of the day, I feel like I'm having to do that to try and hit my commission, for instance, instead of I'm choosing to work those extra hours because I want to do something. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's the lack of control you feel like you have over your time and the work that you're doing repetitively, in my mind, leads to burnout, I think. So it's that lack of control, that lack of authority or agency that you have,
Yeah.
autonomy, sorry, over your own time and work ethic. And that slowly leads to burnout.
Yeah.
That's my own sort of interpretation alongside Florence's.
100%. I fully resonate with the autonomy side of it.
Yeah.
I think so much of it, with this, we both work full-time jobs, but then we're up till early hours of the morning doing this because either the flow state or whatever, we're both just so carried away with the pleasure of doing it and we're choosing to do it that time doesn't feel like exhausting or anything like that. Whereas if I were to be continuing my paid employment until 1 in the morning, I might have a different feeling about it. Now, for me, I'm not sure that I think the autonomy and the agency and the choice is like one part of it. I do think that is good, but not necessarily sustainable. And the balance must be met. So, I don't think that, and we don't anymore. We don't stay up till 1 a.m.
It's not doable.
Or and then get up again at 6 a.m. We find other ways to make things work because we can have all the choice of it in the world, but energy is energy, stress is stress, resilience is resilience, and if we aren't getting sleep is so important. There's so much research into sleep and burnout and how even NHS, Mind, all of these websites and resources say how one of the keys, I think it's 12 or 13 ways of recovering from burnout, is sleep is always at the top of the list.
Really?
So sleep being pivotal and is an example of, okay, yes, we can choose to do this, but if we're neglecting some basic needs that our body has, I completely agree with you, but I think it's just one area of it.
Just thinking, how odd is it that as humans, something so fundamental to our not only survival but our thriving, we neglect so often. We literally don't put as a priority. That's not even built in. Like, I know we get tired, but people push through. We have all these stimulants and these drinks, and our society's built around marketing these things to take. Oh, you're tired? Here's this pill, or here's this Red Bull, or whatever it is, and that's like a good thing, even coffee or whatever it is, but it's so fundamental to get good sleep. Leaning into that would probably make us so much better at what we're trying to do anyway. Yeah. Always looking for the easy way.
Yeah, it reminds me of all the tube stops having.
That's exactly what I was referencing. That lady yawning.
Yeah, the
Fluoridics.
Wellman, and then there's Wellwoman or something as well, and they've got like no disrespect, big fan, but like Vic Hope is the new spokeswoman.
David Gandy's the male model.
Yeah,
she's a really good looking buff guy.
I'm not surprised that the only place they're marketed is in down underground in the tube stations. When everyone's commuting, everyone's tired, and so here we are.
Or on bus stops.
Yes. So if you're asking my thoughts about burnout before before I go into the academic side, I
Yeah.
yeah, I picture burnout to be like a spiral, being again,
Yeah.
someone
A
said
spectrum.
someone said yesterday, it's an out of body experience, like you're sort of looking at yourself
Mm.
from the outside
Yeah.
and just seeing this out of control mess who is exhausted, yeah, not in control, feels like there's no end, no resolution, and just sort of on overdrive. I imagine sort of an animation of of like a person just at their computer in an
Mm.
office in a cube doing this like
Yeah.
with zombie eyes. That's
Yeah.
sort of what I imagine seeing myself as like in the third person, like
Yeah.
in a state of burnout. Yeah, the withdrawal as well as something else I think of is sort of how you then just become emotionally switched off as well, and just then when burnt out and stressed and all of those things, thinking about irritability and
Yeah.
just short temper and just not a happy person basically.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think that's kind of all of where I see
The
it.
feels feel deeper.
Oh my God, everything feels it feels like raw to touch when
Yeah.
you're yeah. And I know there's other states when you're just in heightened stress or you
Yeah.
have heightened anxiety or you go through a traumatic life event.
Yeah.
You feel that sort of raw vulnerability
Yeah.
or like, an argument feels so much more intense or
Yeah.
stubbing your toe feels like
The end of the
the
world.
end of the world. But
Yeah.
I think that is also typical in cases of burnout as well.
Yeah.
I think burnout is associated with work or productivity if we're
Mm.
looking at what it in terms of a
Yeah.
definition. Um, Not always vocational, but it's to do with you're trying to produce something, make something, get to an end goal, reach a destination,
Yeah.
which is often whether that's paid or unpaid work or being productive towards something, say like the
Yeah.
podcast, for example,
Yeah.
and you get burnt out along that journey of getting there or
Yeah.
trying to achieve your salary or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That's how I see burnout to be.
Do you think you can get burnt out from something that you truly, truly love doing? Because I know someone said recently, can't remember where I heard it, but someone said that stress, the difference between stress and fatigue, stress comes from doing something which is difficult and for a long time, which isn't something that you truly care about, but fatigue might come from something that you truly like doing. So for us, I know the balance between our jobs and this podcast, slightly different sorts of types of stress, because not always are we wanting to do our, at least I can speak for myself, not always am I rearing to do my job, but with this, always wanting to. And the stress I feel in my job versus the stress I feel in this podcast is different sorts of stress. Like the sort of fatigue I feel afterwards.
I think yes, you can personally. I
Okay.
think there are times where I have had to work on not catastrophizing it because to me, I see this podcast and this project and everything that we haven't discussed yet that's growing outside of this podcast in itself.
Yeah.
I see that to be passion, that everything like purpose, sort of what's giving me all of sort of drive.
Yeah.
And therefore, when I see it to be something, sometimes when I'm like, I don't want to edit this video today,
Mm.
at the beginning when I started to feel like that, I was like, what's wrong with me? This is supposed to be amazing and
Yeah.
this is supposed to be brilliant. It is, but we can't always be feeling that high and we can't always be
No,
feeling
it's
like this
true.
is amazing, especially when you want something to be sustainable.
Yeah.
For me, to be sustainable, we have to meet a baseline, and at a baseline, you then ebb and flow. Here's your baseline. Visually, I'm drawing a horizontal line. You ebb and flow, you get the highs, you also get the lows around that baseline. This is the baseline I like, and I want this baseline for this passion and this to work well.
Yeah.
But to have that baseline and that let's call it an average, to average something, you're going to have a bit below and you're going to have stuff
Of
high.
course.
And it's not to say my baseline is low in itself. It
Yeah.
just other baselines of other jobs or whatever might be
Yeah.
lower. But in this, I still feel like just naturally, and I don't know if I'm speaking too figuratively here, and I need to bring it back to reality. But yeah, I think that it is okay for it to be tiring. It is okay for it to be exhausting, and it is okay to not enjoy it all of the time. It's not to say the net isn't extremely fulfilling, like the best thing I've ever done in my life, all of those
course.
sorts of things. But I would be lying to myself, I think. And then as such, as a result of that, I think if I didn't manage myself and my passion, especially knowing myself and my too much gene, as I call it,
Yeah.
I could burn out, I think. not because of, and that's why I also think that burnout isn't just the autonomy and the choice. It's the sleep.
Yeah, it's lack
It's
of
the
balance.
resource. It's the balance. It's the being able to just eat healthily or
Yeah.
exercise. It's the all of these other things that even academic evidence shows is sort of or supports that is leads
Yeah.
towards
I
burnout.
know we're only about 6 months into this journey, but for the first 3 months or so doing this, we weren't like the diet was way out the window, wasn't it? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Takeaways and 2 meals a day, and like that is not sustainable. And even
No.
if it's on this sort of project over a 6 month period, if we hadn't dialed it back, found the balance between, regulating meals, sleeping normal
Yeah.
times, I'd say we would have been burnt out from it.
We're still finding it.
That's what Jay said
But
to us, wasn't it? Was
yeah.
guys take he was like slow down a bit, the success will come.
Yeah.
Know that you guys are enjoying this at the time, but just respect that as well.
Yeah.
Know to look after yourself in this moment.
Yeah. Which we are doing, and I think it's so helpful having each other for that.
Mm.
I can't put into words how valuable that is because
got
for me, I would have just done, I would have crashed a long time ago, or I wouldn't have done whatever. I wouldn't. Having someone to not only, for me also, is having someone else to, not like it's mutual, so it's not like whatever, but having someone to look after in a way as well. When you're so demotivated,
Yeah.
like I hope you won't mind me saying, but yesterday with the street interviews,
Yeah.
I took pleasure in being able to look after that situation
Of course.
and do that because that's what teams do. And I know there's been many times when it's been reversed. And I think that's just one example of how having that duo in our instance, but working in a team in other people's cases, the burnout is also less a risk potentially because we can also be like, okay, Charlie, this week I'm really struggling with this thing that's going on in my life, or I've got this deadline at my actual paid employment. I'm going to be working overtime. I can't do this, whatever. So we can pick up each other's slacks, which is a protective factor against burnout potentially.
Yeah.
However, we are still trying to navigate and find that balance somewhere. Look,
I don't think we're meant to have found it yet, which is part of the good thing.
But also we started it and then we instantly were moving house and then all of these things.
Yeah.
We're still settling in. The dust is still very much settling.
No, it is. This is probably a bit funny for me to say as we're literally on a podcast now. So it'll be someone watching a podcast clip of me talking about a podcast clip. But I was watching one and this guy was being interviewed and I think it was this Diary of a CEO one, so it was quite a big clip. I can't remember who he was speaking to, but he was talking about work-life balances when you're in your 20s trying to start something up new. And he was like, how do you deal with the work-life balance? And the guy just came back, responded with, flip it. Respectfully, bleep that out. It was it was nice to know that shouldn't be a thing.
Okay.
I don't think that sort of work-life balance shouldn't be there. I think, and that's fine that it's not as well.
What do you mean? Can you elaborate, please?
What do you mean?
So work-life balance shouldn't be there.
It's fine if it's not there. Yeah, when you're in your 20s trying to start up a new project, it's fine if you don't have that work-life balance. It's okay that you don't always strike the balance on the head.
I've seen counter to that, and I don't know where I actually sit with that.
Was it in another podcast clip?
Well, so there's I can't remember her name, but she's very much on my For You page at the moment, and there's this woman who started her business in women's underwear and is now just this mogul. No, not underwear, jeans. That's it, jeans. She's now a mogul across the world, and she's this multi-millionaire. I don't know, she could be a billionaire, I don't know. I'm seeing her doing all of these rounds of press and talking about... And she said, if anyone in an interview asks me about work-life balance, I immediately reject them. Don't be silly, don't stop asking about work-life balance, that sort of thing. And I mean, I thought it was like...
Wait, what?
Yeah. Like, you shouldn't be trying to strive for a work-life balance. You should just make that yourself, and you should be able to find balance. Just, it's not up to us to give you a work-life balance, but also...
Oh, in an interview this
is. And she's also like, if you enjoy your job, you shouldn't be caring about work-life balance. You should just be doing your job and then finding time for your life outside of enjoying your job and your passion for your job. And if you're asking about work-life balance and you don't have enough passion and determination for the job...
Yeah.
And then I saw... just another response to that being like, not everyone earns six figures. Not everyone can have the passion to get paid 30k a year and not have a work-life balance. Not everyone is a business owner that can give every single hour of their day to being not having a work-life balance. So to say I dismiss someone who asks about work-life balance because they don't have enough passion or drive, it kind of it's they were saying, they were talking on a macro scale, talking about how it's sort of perpetuating, we need the workers to think that this is the normal way of living and that you
Yeah.
should just completely give everything to these big companies and give your whole life away, because that's
Yeah.
what we need these working class people to think that.
Yeah.
And having these big billionaires going around
Telling you
perpetuating
to
don't
not.
have a work-life balance is just a really toxic sort of
It
challenge.
is.
Um,
Yeah.
Sorry, I just got in a roundabout way to that, but
No,
it
I think
reminded
you're
me.
inadvertently agreeing with me there.
Yeah,
So.
okay. I wasn't. I
I know you weren't
wasn't
intentionally doing it, but
clarified what you were saying. I
no,
couldn't.
no. It's a really good idea. I do think someone who's started their own company out of their own passion and being able to grow it to that level is probably easier to say, you shouldn't need to ask me about work-life balance. Whereas someone who's maybe looking for a job as a starter entry or an entry job into that sort of industry to try and get somewhere else,
Yeah.
it's a valid question. So,
Yeah, very much is.
but yeah, I think starting out something as like a passion project, I don't think there is that balance, but I also think that's okay as well.
Yeah, we were speaking to someone else the other day. Probably won't mention them, but they are kind of their own entrepreneur as well in their own thing and business owner. And they said to both of us, what is it? You do something you love and you never work a day in your life, but at the same time you never have a day off either. When we were running the other day, and it's talking about when people say, "Oh, if you find a job that you love and you're passionate about, you'll feel like you're never at work." But at the same time, you never have a day off because you love it and you're always doing it.
Is that the Monday Mood Booster?
No, it doesn't matter. When we were talking about balance of work and things, and the person that was talking to us was saying about exactly that, that you don't have to, if you find a job that you love,
Yeah.
or build your business that you love, you'll never work a day in your life, in quotes, being like, because you're enjoying it. But at the same time, you never have a single day off because you're always doing that job.
Yeah.
And if you're on holiday, you're always responding to emails or responding to whatever because it's your passion and you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how much at the time. I remember you being like, I kind of challenged that, and I think I also do kind of challenge that. I don't know. I'm not sure, but we're still very much trying to figure out, and we actually have a meeting tomorrow, peek behind the curtains, to like look at sort of finding weekends and plans to
Yes.
just be like, okay, this isn't something where we're going to go networking or to an event or
To
recording. Like,
actually have it off.
we're just going to not do anything.
Well, the thing is,
or see our families or whatever.
not a lot of people have the same length of time planned out. So like I have friends who have messaged saying, "Hey, I'm back in about 2 weeks' time. Are you free?" I'm like, "No, I've not been free for 3 months. I'm sorry, it's been booked out, and I want to see that person, but I've made plans already, so it feels bad to sort of say no to that person." So it's an interesting one, having to intentionally block out weekends, but then also book stuff in advance because you can't expect everyone to work to your own sort of.
Yeah.
But then how much of that is on me to try and book in his weekends that far in advance?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know if we're doing this correctly. I'm not saying we're in a unique situation here where we're balancing like three different jobs between us. But I feel like we're doing what's best for us at this moment of being like, okay, well, if we
so,
weren't to make these plans, we would just continue sort of snowballing and not giving ourselves that time off. And I think it's good to maybe be intentional in this situation. We might look back and be like, okay, planning weekends off 3 months in advance was a bit extra and we didn't need to do that. But I think just we've had 3 months or whatever, and it might just be good to be intentional with the events that we're going to and the plans that we have for work.
Yeah.
But also be intentional with, okay, we're also protecting that time for ourselves, so we avoid things like fatigue and burnout and whatnot.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows?
I think to be I don't know. I'm not saying I'm not preaching. I'm not saying I'm better than everyone else. But I imagine what I imagine sort of someone who is sort of a business owner with lots of different things and many different pies and whatnot. They have, I mean, people have blooming PAs and stuff, don't they, who plan all of their time for them. We don't have that, and we're not trying to have that. But I think organisation and planning your time is something that is key here.
It's something that's good. So to say it's not is probably a bit.
Yeah.
No, I think it's never a bad thing to have your time planned out.
No.
Does take you a little bit away from the spontaneity, but
Yes, which
then
you very much love, and I do in a way.
I do.
Love spontaneity.
Yeah, I do. But then again, how much of that can be planned experiences or time where you can allow for the spontaneity?
Yeah.
Planned spontaneity.
Well, it's like I've got this weekend free. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I'm not doing anything.
Exactly
so we'll see what happens when it comes to it.
See.
Someone might text you in the week and be like, "Yeah, actually, I'm free this week," or you
yeah.
could just be like, "I'm going to go on a road trip down to wherever and see what happens."
Exactly that.
Exactly that. It's all about
Exactly
balance. So, in
that.
terms of the
Yes.
academic side of burnout,
Yes.
we have Maslach and Jackson, who are the founding fathers, arguably, of burnout.
Okay.
In 1981, they came up with, or they curated the Maslach Burnout Inventory,
Okay.
and it's still used to this day as in academia, but also then, which then bleeds out into just what we know to be burnout, as sort of the guiding. Well, it is a measure. It's actually a measurement tool to measure
Yeah.
burnout in someone. So they would answer a series of questions within this tool, but it's also like a definition of what burnout is. So the Maslach inventory defines burnout as a psychological syndrome emerging as a prolonged response to chronic interpersonal stresses within a job. So it is specific to a job or
Okay.
an activity that is of a similar nature. It's typically, and they have it within 3 dimensions. So it's typically characterized by 3 dimensions: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization or cynicism, and reduced personal accomplishment. Personal accomplishment. It sounded like I was from Bristol then.
Very
So
lush.
there's the 3 dimensions basically within this inventory, the burnout inventory,
Yeah.
which run through, and I think that we also speak to and
Yeah.
think about. So the emotion, the exhaustion in itself, just feeling tired constantly, you cannot replenish that energy.
Through sleep, you cannot.
Yeah,
No.
you have complete sort of lack of your temper goes out the window. You have no sort of emotional regulation or reduced emotional regulation. Just everything that comes with the exhaustion is accounted for within the 1981 definition of what burnout is.
You don't have that
Um,
arsenal of
no,
emotional, not weapons, but that sort of arsenal which you usually rely on.
no.
That feels empty.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And everything, like stubbing your toe, feels like the end of the world.
Yeah.
The depersonalization or cynicism is kind of that detachment that one might feel. So you kind of, I'm like, I just don't care anymore. This is all ridiculous.
What's it all for?
You're all ridiculous. Yeah, you're not only depersonalized or detached from the place of work or I guess, the initial stressor in this situation, which would be
Yeah.
your job, but then that then lends and bleeds into your own life, your own personal goals. I just can't be bothered. I don't want to do it anymore. It comes also with that sort of hopelessness,
Yeah.
and that I guess the diminished motivation that comes there. You're so also, it's important to say that these 3 dimensions
Yeah.
aren't mutually exclusive and they completely blend in with one another.
Okay.
So you're so emotionally exhausted, you then, within the second dimension, the depersonalization, you just don't care. You give up, you're not bothered anymore, and you're just cynical of all of it, and
Yeah.
you're just not interested.
It's
But
so funny.
yeah, which then naturally leads to the reduced personal accomplishment. So you're not reaching your targets, you're not meeting your goals. That motivation to succeed isn't there, so you're not succeeding, and you're giving up, and things start to completely drop, and you're
You
completely
don't have that
dropped out.
initiative to go out as you usually would.
Yeah, the initiative
Yeah.
is very much
Reduced.
not there or reduced.
Yeah.
The World Health Organization.
Who?
I almost fell for that again.
Punk.
They don't classify it. So the World Health Organization, who have the ICD-11, which is the International Classifications of Diseases. So any physical or mental disorder, disease is classified and defined and diagnosable by the World Health Organization's ICD,
Okay.
the International Classifications of Diseases.
Got it.
So, for example, when I was doing my PhD in conduct disorder, which is a mental disorder, I was talking about conduct disorder as defined by the World Health Organization in the ICD-11.
Got it. Okay.
So the World Health Organization have the ICD-11. The ICD-11 doesn't classify burnout as a disorder in itself, but a phenomenon that people experience, which is linked to certain different disorders such as anxiety and depression. So they talk about it as factors. It's factors influencing health status or contact with health services, which includes reasons for which people contact the health services, but are not necessarily classed as illnesses or health conditions. So they define it as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And like with the inventory, they basically have, and like I say, that inventory is sort of the gold standard framework. They also have 3 dimensions, which is the feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion, the increased mental distance from one's job or feeling negativism or cynicism related to that job, and again, the reduced professional efficacy or accomplishment. So again, this is something that is recognised not only in decades worth of academic research and theory, but by the World Health Organization, who is internationally recognised. Not sure about Donald Trump. I don't think he's the biggest fan of the World Health Organization, but we don't necessarily need to think about his opinion.
I don't think so, yeah.
Yeah, I've got symptoms. Do you want to see some of the symptoms?
I was interested. Symptoms of burnout. Go ahead.
So we have physical, emotional, and behavioural symptoms.
3 categories.
Yes. I think when we read through these, again, these are commonly available NHS website, again, the World Health Organization, a lot of them make sense. And they, again, fall within these domains that have been posed for decades. So, again, the physical symptoms, exhaustion, reoccurring insomnia, sleep disturbance is a huge one. And sleep disturbance, if you read any literature, which we will share some and we'll continue to talk about, so all of the readings will be in the sort of the descriptions of today's
they'll be in the bios.
podcast. All literature, or most literature, obviously not all, the vast majority of literature that speaks about burnout, there's some mention of sleep problems or sleep disturbance somewhere. Sleep is such a huge thing within burnout, and it's discussed heavily within burnout. And ironically, it's part of the causing factor of burnout, but then is perpetuating factor, and it's a consequence of burnout as well. So reduced sleep,
catch-22,
yes, reduced sleep is seen to be as a risk factor, but also a consequence.
Symptom.
Yes. Because if you think you're stressed, you're burnt out, you've been through, I mean, literally stressful things at the moment. Whenever you've been through something stressful in your life, sleep is something that it
goes.
So
it's also something that you crave as well.
Vicious cycle. Frequent headaches. Muscle and joint pain. Gastroenterial. Oh, sorry, I cannot say that word. Stomach problems. Good thing I'm not your GP, because I'm
tummy hurt.
Yeah, my tummy hurts. I'll leave that to my brother. He's the medic. Stomach problems, feeling sick or loss of appetite, which is very true. Frequent illnesses due to lowered immunity efficacy. High blood pressure and issues with breathing. Now, if you look at those physical symptoms, I don't know, I guess to put it into layman's terms, they are all symptoms you would see within stress, anxiety. That's your cortisol, your stress response, your nervous system working, all of those things, fight or flight, you think, but also chronic stress as well. When you have elevated levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, your appetite's reduced because you need, from different psychological perspectives, and I'm going to go off on a tangent here, evolutionary perspective, if you're going through stress, the idea is that you...
Do you subscribe to evolutionary psychology?
Enough of that. Prolonged stress or whatever, or you don't eat as much because your stomach needs to put blood, your body needs to put blood elsewhere, so your stomach shouldn't be digesting food in that moment, because you need blood for muscles to be able to run and to be able to get away, and for your brain to be able to function. Again, stress with headaches, sleep, all of those things, these are all symptoms that come with burnout, but ultimately are reduced with associated with increased stress and anxiety. Emotional symptoms: helpless, trapped, deflated, feeling all of those things. Feeling self-doubt and feeling worthless. Feeling detached and alone. Feeling overwhelmed. Feeling demotivated. Lack of sense of satisfaction and achievement. Apathy, so loss of interest or enjoyment, and persistent feelings of dread, worry, and again, anxiety. So again, all of these things are just adverse experiences, adversities.
It's incredible to hear all these things being listed, because in the moment, I know for myself, when I'm feeling these things, they feel so personal and feel like, or at least I often feel, I'm the only one going through this. No one else knows how deep I'm feeling this. Hearing them all being listed out, it just puts it into perspective that other people do go through this as well. It's why it's so important to speak about it. It's why it's so important just to see it as, listen, the more we speak about it, the less power it has over us. Is what we always say is, the more we can say, I'm feeling really deflated, or I'm feeling like I'm doubting myself, all these things, it just takes the power away that it has over us.
Yeah.
Because other people can say back to you, oh yeah, I've been feeling that. This is exactly what this is, or that's what that is as well. It also lets you know that it's not you, that you're not those emotions as well, which is so important, because when we're in these lower states, it's, at least I find for myself, really easy to internalize them and think, God, what is wrong with me? Why am I feeling these things? Is it something that I've not worked on enough? Is it, what is, why can I not get through it?
Yeah.
But instead of just speaking about it, knowing that I'm not those emotions and they will pass, allows them to sort of sit in me better as well, and for them to have less control.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
But it's incredible to stay.
Yeah, and that's the thing, especially like it literally says here, you feel that isolation. But ironically, if you were to just, I say just as if it's an easy thing to do, but if you were to speak and let it be known and communicate that, or however that might be, or not necessarily communicate your feelings, but maybe understand others or whatever. Yeah, it helps just a little bit with that sort of confusion, isolation, feeling alienated, because even in this moment, it's kind of reassuring to know that this isn't, is maybe a bit more common of an experience than it feels like when you're in your own brain and you only have your brain as a guiding context and compass.
It's where you live.
Yeah.
Or at least most people live, so it's where you should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try and make a nice place.
Yeah. Thirdly is behavioural symptoms. And again, they're all aligned, so they make sense. So, procrastination, taking long to complete tasks. Difficulty concentrating, that's a huge one for me.
Yeah.
Decreased output and productivity. Isolation, withdrawing from people and responsibilities. Relying on things like drugs or alcohol to cope.
That's a bit of you, isn't it?
Yeah, substances. Irritable and short-tempered. I didn't hear what you said.
I said that's a bit of you, isn't it?
That is a bit of me. Just literally.
Straight in there.
Please. Where's that nicotine?
He's tapping his forearm for anyone who's not.
Honestly,
he's not watching.
Recording these episodes is the hardest thing because I have to go an hour and a half without my vape. I'm joking, please do not. I do not vape.
Guys, he sleeps with a mango jelly vape under his pillow. It's crazy.
I do not vape, so let's just not get that.
First thing in the morning, last thing at night. You have a little alarm on your phone at 4 a.m. just to take a mid-sleep vape.
I don't need an alarm, I just wake up for it. No, that is not something that I do.
Alright, Margaret.
Irritable and short-tempered.
Guys, can we please spam Margaret Vapes in the comments below?
And increased tardiness or being late, which is something that you're good at. So.
Well, I'm permanently burnt out then.
Yes, you are.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I think that there is, for me, all of those things sound like common stress, common anxiety. Not common, but you know what I mean. They're typical of other forms of stress and anxiety as well that aren't necessarily just burnout. For me, I'm interested in what distinguishes burnout from other forms of stress and anxiety, and I wonder whether it's linked to, well, I know it is because it's the definitions that we're given, very much jobs and productivity around jobs or hobbies that are supposed to be giving us
I was just about to say
employment and things.
For me, as soon as you say how do we differentiate between other forms of stress and burnout, where my mind instantly goes is to two things. Is one, feelings of being deflated, so just how like low and just like, oh, do you feel like just being deflated, and the lack of productivity and like the lack of willingness to even try start something. For me, those are two big signs that I feel more burnt out, I would say, than if I was a stressed being, After work, I'm often stressed, I'd say, but I still feel capable to do certain things and still have a bit of energy, but my mind's just more sort of on edge.
Yeah.
But I know in times when I felt so burnt out, I just feel like I want to just lie flat on a grass for days and days, and I don't want to do anything. Any responsibility that comes my way, it won't be done to the highest extent that it can do.
Yeah.
That it can be done.
Have you ever had burnout, do you think?
It's interesting. Since speaking about it before, I know we say medically we want to make sure we're correct with it. Not to the extent, because I know you were saying, and I fully appreciate this, some people have had burnout where they literally need to not work for a year. I don't think I've been burnt out to that level.
It's not to say there's like mild, moderate, and severe. So
No, of
you
course.
can definitely have burnout.
I would definitely say there have been points where I felt very burnt out, where everything's just feeling like it's collapsing. out of control, and I don't really want to try and fix it either. I don't have the energy, nor do I feel like I have the want to even try and, cling to all the ropes, trying to go away to all the ropes flying around the shop. I just want to let it all just settle and just be like, I'll come back to it when it's all just crumbled. Whether that's from long, long days, as I've said in the beginning of this episode, sales. I know I was saying to you, half of my paycheck is commission, half is salary. Now the salary isn't huge, but the commission can allow for me to earn more. But there's a certain limit that you need to hit, or a certain sort of ceiling that you need to hit to be able to unlock this commission. And especially as it's a month by month sort of structure as well, if it's getting to the halfway through the month or even past that and you're not near it, the stress that can come with that and the burnout, you put everything on the line, that you work longer hours, and if you don't hit it, just the level of like, oh my god, all for nothing. It just feels quite deflating, and your brain often goes to these sorts of places of, I'm not even earning from the thing I want to be earning from. What am I doing it if it's just for money? All these sorts of questions flying on the shop as well, flying on the shop, and so yeah, I think with sales, I know for my friends in sales as well, there's a lot of burnout just due to the extreme hours it requires to be put into the job.
Yeah.
I say it's a very, I know this is probably me being, I'm going to say it, other people do work harder jobs, whether it's manual labour, other jobs which are just more stressful as well. So I do appreciate me working in a nice office with a coffee machine. Like, it's a very cushy job as well.
Yeah, but your reality is your reality.
Exactly that.
And money's money, and you have to pay bills and all of those sorts of things.
Exactly
so
that,
you're allowed to feel that. And
funny.
when it's I'm struggling. I don't want to like overspeak. But yeah, it's just difficult, and I can see
It
how
is.
that. And I don't know how I would be able to do that myself.
Yeah.
I think from what you've told me, it's kind of, you get the, phew, I managed to hit target this month.
It's the reset.
Therefore, I can afford life or whatever. Sorry. But then literally, immediately, one day later, we've got to go again. Over and over
I think
and
that's
over
the
again.
hardest part. I was saying to you earlier on the walk, is the reset of it. Is the month ends. There's been such a hard push through the month to try and hit your target. Boom, first day back in the office or the first week. Guys, let's try and keep up the pressure. Let's just keep on going. Let's try and hit target.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, I just took a breath. It feels like you're being dunked underwater. Someone lets you come up for air. Boom, straight back under, and you have to fight still again. So that doesn't stop month to month. That's for years. That's just there's like no end to it. So that level of repetitiveness at the high intensity of it, I think, is what leads to the burnout.
Yeah. As always, just very quickly saying this because we don't need to always apologise for what we're saying, but we appreciate that we very much live in a well-off society, country, and have money.
Of course.
His reality is still very valid, and have your pay being significantly different based on this is very valid, and I
do appreciate
that's okay.
The fact I get to
have that
even
experience.
work this job is still a blessing.
We don't need to always say that. We know who we are. We know that those things are the case. But yes, your experience is valid.
Of course, it's still something that I go through. So
yeah.
What about you?
I would say yes. I have a PhD.
Really?
So I don't feel like, and I don't want to perpetuate.
Can I get a signature, please?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
1 second. I don't want to perpetuate the fact that we the PhDs are always bad and
guys, you don't know what he wrote. Marcus,
stop, stay focused.
We'll include a picture.
We'll put it in the carousel.
Instagram.
That PhDs are always bad, because when I was doing my PhD, I used to get in my own brain about people always saying, "Oh, they're so stressful," and I was making myself feel bad for not seeing everyone else's stress and not feeling that bad, and whatever, is a whole comparison thing, which is really annoying. However, now having done it, I feel like having done a PhD, it's a rite of passage, and I shouldn't say that, but I feel like it is. When I was finishing my PhD, I was on a scholarship. My scholarship was coming to an end. I was working 2 other jobs and a third, kind of. I was So I was doing my marketing job, which I still do and love to this day. I was also lecturing, which I still do and love to this day, one day a week or one afternoon a week. And then at that time, I was also teaching in a school as well in an
Yeah.
afternoon to fund all of this, as well as being a trustee at a charity, as well as at this time trying to start a run club, which was very much in its infancy, whilst also trying to complete my PhD. And it was just an incomprehensible amount of
Yeah.
work and demand, and just I was never not fighting fires. And I was in a stage where any time a single email would come in and I would just absolutely go off the chain, like, I can't do this, this is ridiculous. I can't reply to this one email because I have no room for movement, margin for error, no time to do anything in either direction. And it was so my completion of it, I would say that when it really ramped up was what year are we in now? 2025. It was January 2024 to around sort of, well, no, sorry, October 2023 to February 2024.
Yeah.
That window of time there was just no bueno. So my sort of symptoms were my lack of sleep. I was up every morning, like 5, writing. Didn't go to. To be fair, I can't write at night time. I'm really bad at that. But then I was doing my other work as well to try and make up the time. So just no sleep. My diet went out of the window. My exercise. I'm still on a run streak, but it was just bare minimum, and I was just doing ungodly hours just to tick it over.
Jesus.
I gained over a stone, if not more.
What's that in kilos?
I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Don't know.
Yeah, it was a lot. I was just functioning on a. I am very much feeling like I'm out of my body watching myself doing this, not feeling like I'm really living a reality, but also at the same time constantly feeling like I'm going through an acute stress response, that every tiny thing is a major significant trigger when it isn't. In like, rationally it isn't. An email from a colleague isn't gonna.
Yeah.
Again, it was what we were talking about last week, the fight or flight stress response, and
Yeah.
my nervous system couldn't differentiate between what felt like a life threat and a work email.
Yeah.
And it was just horrible. And I think I didn't realize how bad it was until I wasn't in it, because that's the thing when you're going through these
Often
things.
is the case.
Whether it's burnout, whether it's grief, whether it's heartache, whatever, you don't really realize until you're through it, or you kind of towards the other side of how kind of, because your body just you just do it, you get through it, you're resilient to it. And people, yeah, I was gonna say people have been through way worse. Again, I don't need to say that. We know that. This is what I went through. It was a mad time, and I definitely feel like there was some form of burnout there. And actually, I had a bit of a real come down afterwards, and a bit of a, I don't know if there was a single time to pinpoint it to, but just a bit of I attributed it to sort of a career crisis, or what am I doing with my life crisis, like a quarter life crisis of, and I think it was just a big sort of that crescendo coming to an end, and all of that major, and don't get me wrong, I'm never going to be someone I'm always oversubscribed with stuff, like it's just in my nature. I'm doing this job, I'm doing this podcast, I've got my
Even
other
in saying
employment.
that, I do want to challenge that. Even in saying that, you're stopping yourself from allowing yourself to have balance. Saying it's in my nature to be over subscribed. You are taking away
but
your own authority to.
That will never. I will never be in that situation again. That's completely.
Yeah, of
different.
course. Yeah.
I feel like I will never, and I couldn't be someone to do a 9 to 5, come home, respectfully read, watch telly, whatever it is. I personally, I don't want to do that. I'm not saying I'm better or worse than anyone else for that. That's just not what I want to do.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was saying there. But
Sorry.
no, it's okay. I just, that was it. Took, it was a big sort of whirlwind, and it was a crash down. The success of the PhD, obviously, but afterwards I was like, whoa, what is this? And I just had a bit of a nervous system sort of, what am I doing with my life? What's going on? And I think that's also comes with the transition of finishing a PhD, and
It does. It's a
everyone
massive
asking
thing,
you
isn't
what's next, and all of those triggering questions in your 20s of what am I doing with my life. But it was also perpetuated by these feelings of burnout, or post burnout sort of just fatigue and lack of resilience, or resolve ability to be able to work through these feelings that I might have been able to been better equipped to have been able to do
Yeah.
beforehand. So that's my I think, experience with burnout, if I were to have any.
It's just as valid, I think.
Yeah, it was hard.
Sounds like it. It
It was
is.
hard.
But it's when you're on the other side you see it for what it is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And
Yeah.
a lot often we, as humans, because we're so wired to survive,
Yeah.
we survive however we survive, and it's not until we get through the whatever's making us need to survive in survival mode that we're like, oh wow, that was something.
Yeah. Wow, wow, we were.
Wow, we
That
were,
was
yeah.
huge. Yeah.
So do you want to hear about the phases of burnout?
No.
Fair enough. Should we call it quits there? Yeah.
Of course I do. Yes. Tell me what are the
Okay,
phases
nice.
of
I
burnout.
have more research as well, which I really want to speak to. I don't know how we're doing for time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about how we stop burnout or recover from burnout.
Okay, well,
Yeah, but I think the phases are quite interesting.
so Freudenberger, which is a great name, in again 1980, around the
Yeah,
same time,
1981 was the IDC.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, was developing these phases of burnout and yeah, recovery or lack thereof.
Yeah.
There are 5 phases here, and I won't sort of, because we want to get on to other things, go too much into them. But there's the honeymoon phase, phase one, where we have high enthusiasm and motivation, but are pushing too hard, with because we're sort of blinded by that enthusiasm and motivation, and which leads to accumulation of stress, which leads to stage two, which is the onset of a stress phase, which is fatigue, irritability, and loss of focus to start that starts appearing. When we ignore these signs, the risk increases of burnout. Then three is the chronic stress phase, where so the ongoing exhaustion and detachment, and having ignored those previous signs, they lead to us getting those sorts of ongoing things, ongoing chronic exhaustion, avoidance behaviors, reduced productivity, and that's where burnout really starts to begin to happen.
Yeah.
Then stage four is actual burnout.
Okay.
So severe exhaustion, mental depletion, the physical symptoms that we've already gone through, productivity and well-being are at their low, and completely severely impacted. We then have habitual burnout, where if we don't go through recovery or do anything to change it, that's where we just stay in the vicious cycle of burnout. So burnout becomes ingrained. It leads to persistent health challenges and career dissatisfaction over a long period, chronic illnesses, and just chronic fatigue,
Wow.
all of those symptoms.
So there needs to be active, sort of something to actively happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, you can risk it actually becoming a detrimental thing for your life.
In line with this 5 phase theory,
Yeah.
according to Freudenberger.
Mm.
Yeah, and I can see that, people,
Okay.
especially, which I think is important for us to talk to if we can and have time, is, and what some of the people we spoke to yesterday spoke about, is sort of in whatever age bracket you are, but living in a city,
Yeah.
also having the comparison now online, or you never escape that comparison,
Yeah.
just constant rat race grind, hustle, make it work. If you're tired, it doesn't matter. You see people around you working all the hours, therefore why aren't you?
The
You
lights
should
in the
be
office
doing
are
that.
always on.
Yeah, my friends who I went to university with are now in these paid jobs up here, and I'm seeing them on social media getting their promotions. Therefore, I need to be dedicating all of my hours to that, and if I'm not, then there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
All of those things perpetuate that sort of toxic comparison and mindset of
Yeah.
productivity, productivity, productivity. And when that's your vision and your goal is productivity, your blinkers are off and you're blinded. It's, I don't know if that's the right terminology.
Your blinkers are on.
Yeah, you're that's it. You're blinded to everything else that's important in your life, because all you're focusing on is productivity, because that's what everyone else is doing in this city, on this social media app, on wherever.
London's particularly bad for it, I think.
Yeah.
It's the city of hustle. How interesting, yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and social media use. I'm the first one to defend social media and see all of its benefits, but we do have a study by Han et al. In 2020, who you'll love to hear,
Hannah Tal. I think I've Hannah Tal.
found well, they had 3 significant results. One, they're just, if you're interested, they had 530 participants and asked them about their burnout, their social media use, and comparison, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
They found that one, there is a significant positive correlation between social media use and job burnout. So there's an association there between the use of social media, and it's positive. So the more social media you use, the higher risk you are of having burnout,
Okay.
or the higher level of burnout you feel.
Yeah.
2, social comparison plays a moderating role in social media's impact on burnout. Now, what moderation analysis is basically you have this correlation here.
Yeah.
There's the third variable that's being added, and we're seeing that this third variable is influencing that relationship. So we have the basic relationship between social media and burnout, but obviously there's so many variables in a human's life,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
The comparison is something that's making that burnout,
Yeah.
that's contributing to that connection between social media and burnout.
Is that
So
the connection they're making? Is that there's the comparison
yes, so
which stems from the social media?
not necessarily stems from exclusively, but it's part of
Yeah.
the relationship between social media and usage and burnout.
Okay.
So what it's saying is social media most likely then causes us to compare ourselves more and have this
Yeah.
comparison phenomenon going on, which then is perpetuating or increasing our chances of feeling burnt out.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The finding number three is that social media users who often make downward comparisons and get positive emotions from it are are more prone to job burnout as well. So again, looking at downward comparisons, comparing themselves negatively to others or others
Got it.
to themselves. Another looking even further within that
Yeah.
exploration.
comparison.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
comparison. We're comparing negatively.
That was the second part there. Downward comparison.
Social media users who often make downward comparisons and get positive emotions from it are
And
prone
get
to.
positive
So it's
emotions
the
from it.
reinforcement from that comparison.
Oh, so it's
Comparison,
it's
sorry.
reinforcing their own negative beliefs through the comparison.
Yeah.
Often even leads to higher burnout.
Yeah, or seeing comparison in either direction, so seeing themselves better than other people gives a positive emotion to themselves.
Mm.
You're like, oh, you're so reinforcing my work because I'm basically comparing myself to this person here on social media, seeing that I'm doing better than them, which is making me feel better about myself in the short term.
Yeah.
But as the research is showing, the findings are showing, is increasing my chances of burnout.
Is it all because it increases the chance or increases your want to work more? Is that what it's saying?
Yeah, well, it'll be whatever what they're looking at is comparison, and there'll be psychological theories within this paper that look at what comparison does to us as human beings.
Yeah.
But comparison, as we know, if you're seeing someone do this over here,
Yeah.
we're naturally like, well, why aren't I doing that? Should I be doing that? Am I da 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 da? So it's making me inclined to or motivated to work more to be able to achieve these goals that I'm seeing other people or
Yeah.
these life milestones that I'm seeing other people
Yeah.
achieve. So really interesting actually that
Yeah, it is,
there's
isn't
this
it?
comparison side of burnout which is so important. And I think it's a huge factor in why research is also showing that burnout is at a high
Yeah.
at the moment, especially amongst more than ever the academic like students, sorry,
Yeah.
because it was historically research found it in the workforce and in industry, whereas now research is seeing it more seeing it to be elevated more than ever in students,
Because of
not only because of, but maybe because we're just maybe studying wider populations. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
to be fair, research, this is very niche information, but research has always been conducted on students,
2020
research
as well.
institutions.
It's a recent paper.
Yeah. So yeah, another study found burnout in young adults. High rates of burnout are now being reported in Gen Z and millennial populations, particularly among students and early career professionals. It's no longer limited to high stress fields like healthcare. And this study showed, and this is by Rottenstein in 2022, it showed that academic burnout is surging, often linked to, again, perfectionism, financial pressure, and online comparison culture. And this is again another study finding that comparison is perpetuating this burnout. I think there's a lot there,
think
and
there's
we
a lot
always
there.
speak about. Literally last week, I was
Yeah.
nearly crying about comparison being ridiculous, not ridiculous. And here we are talking again about a different phenomenon being burnout and how comparison is perpetuating that.
Why do you think humans inherently compare? Why do you think as humans we are drawn to compare? I know with things like social media we do it more.
Well, we're pack animals.
Yeah.
We survive. We are. I don't know the definite. I can't remember the specific term for it, but we survive in a group. We're not alone. We're not alone. A singular species.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's many social interactions that are involved in our survival, including companionship. What's the all of these things.
Yeah.
Families looking after each other, whatever.
Hmm.
Another thing is being part of a group allows us, it gives us social information as to where we need to be and
Yeah.
what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
If someone here is doing this, this allows me, from again maybe a survival perspective or whatever,
Yeah.
to know that I am maybe doing something right or I'm doing something wrong. Context is really important for us to survive. We need to know that we're doing roughly the right thing.
Yeah.
How do we get that information? We get that from other people around us. So we are wired, I believe,
Yeah.
to look to other people
Completely
and
agree.
be like, okay, well, this is what's happening here. Therefore,
It's the herd mentality. Maybe
yes,
that's what you meant
exactly,
to say.
herd mentality. We use other people as reference points to know roughly where we need to be. However, that's from a survival perspective. As with many things that have evolved in us, we now have cognition and the ability to challenge these innate drives and use rational thinking to override them and say, okay, this person who's also 28 has done this with their life. However, that doesn't mean therefore I am behind or ahead. This just means that that's what they're doing. We have so much free will and ability to make our and shape our own lives now and do our own things with financial, for us, financial freedom, all of those sorts of things. We don't necessarily need these primal sort of, okay, this is what this person's doing, therefore to survive I also need to do something similar. We have endless ways of thriving and surviving in the 21st century. However, it comes from that sort of, potentially argued, I think, from that place as one of many things.
Yeah.
Comparison is what we're also, from a behavioralist perspective, we're trained and socialized to compare with people. In schools, you're in a grading system, you're in sets, all of those things, your exams, how did you do, how did your colleague do.
It's a really good
from
point.
from
From the
literal
education
birth,
system, the way it's set up isn't to benefit everyone, it's to benefit the top
yeah.
few.
And it's also not necessarily to blame anyone, but parents, they, oh, your firstborn was like this, your secondborn was like this. It's just, it's funny, it's observations that people make. We just naturally, we default to making comparisons between people, and just observations. It's not like it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that we do and we make those observations. So therefore, if we're socialized like that from primary socialization, our parents, but then our schooling systems, our vocation. In capitalism, we have to compare. We have to compete with each other to succeed. There's so many reasons we compare ourselves
you've
to one
just said
another.
it there. In capitalism, it's a natural way of comparing, and if you don't do as well, it's not there's not what's it not the equality. It's equity in terms of everyone starting on the same capital, same level, or comparatively, sorry, to what they are.
Yeah.
Because we are in a capitalist society. I'm not here trying to push communism or whatever or whatnot, but because everyone's starting on different levels and go on their different paths, inherently our school systems are set up in a way that comparison is there. So we take that on because we learn that. We take it on, and then people grow up and then begin to use these platforms like social media, which are comparisons. But as you said, because we now have the ability to critically think, how much can we challenge that? How much can you become a so-called victim of social media, or how much can you use it as a tool to say, I'm not going to let it, I'm not going to consume this much content and become a victim and compare myself. I'm going to use it as a tool to grow, and then I'm going to be boundaried with it and say I'm not going to use it for this sake because I know this has that impact on me.
Yeah, but it's
and
also
part of that.
Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say part of that then would lead into how you can possibly resolve through comparison and then burnout is those boundaries, I think.
For sure, definitely. It's also, like you say, just also knowing that comparison is futile, because that person who you're seeing in this instance on social media is just one part of their life. You're seeing someone who's just got married, or you're seeing someone, whatever your goal is, you see someone who's got a promotion. They could be desperately unhappy in that job. They could be desperately unhappy in that marriage, but they've just done it because they're confused and don't know what else they need to do. Comparison is futile in this right now, because
you never know
you're only looking at one tiny part of the bigger picture in that person's life. And that's where I guess the research comes back in, is sort of more than ever potentially burnout is being observed because it's linked with comparison. And now, again, I'm not pathologizing social media, but maybe this is one of the negatives of it, is we don't have an escape so much from that comparison, because before our generation, we don't know this, but people wouldn't have in their pocket seeing everyone's lives constantly. They would catch up with their friends over dinner, over
a phone call,
over and potentially celebrities over the news or whatever. but then they would come home and live their lives.
And that was the reality of it.
Yeah. Now, instantly, you're bored, you're scrolling, whatever. You're constantly seeing everyone. You're exposed to what everyone else is achieving, what their goals are, what's happening. You're flooded with that information. You can understand why then that comparison is hard to escape.
Completely agree. Like if you go to bed and before you go to bed for 20 minutes,
Yeah.
all the content you're feeding your brain is here's 45 people my age who are in Bali in like a yoga retreat, who have done all their own businesses, who are millionaires. That's the content you're pushing on, and then you go to bed and sleep. You as you just said, it's not a surprise. You're then when you go to work, you have these questions where you're like, oh my god, this isn't what I want to be doing. Why can't I be doing this and that? And you try and solve all these massive life issues, but that's not how you get through it. And the initial thing was just you having that 20 minutes on your phone, being stimulated with all these irrational things which you don't know the concept of. You know, these people could be out there for a week on holiday or being paid by their parents. You don't know whatever the story is. So it's just taking it with a pinch of salt if you can. Or not consuming it in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. No, I don't think it's complete inoculation from it or removal from it, but it's just like rationalization and boundaries and
boundaries with them.
And I think giving yourself the context that you don't have all the context. And that's what's important. Yeah, I think before we think about wrapping up, a final thing I wanted to talk about and saw research on was there's so much to be fair, but just for the sake of time, is the sort of the blur in a digital age and moving away from social media, but digital facilitators of work, like hybrid working, and how we might see hybrid workers to be very fortunate, but actually research shows that hybrid workers are at risk of burnout because of the lack of boundaries and the blurred lines of them being at home and then constantly seeing their phone going at work and not knowing, okay, this is my home, this is my safe space to be away from my work that's demanding my resources. But actually, I'm now here and can answer my emails at any time. Someone can call me at any time. Whereas burnout is actually you reduce the risk of burnout by being able to make that separation and distinguish from, okay, this is my life, this is my work. So when you're at home, that sort of blurred line is something that is actually where those boundaries become unclear. It's research has shown that yes, it does lead to potential increased risks of burnout again.
So arguably working from home actually it's actually less balance.
Potentially. It depends, again, how you navigate that balance and you navigate those boundaries, and whether you can say, okay, my laptop's off.
How bounded
I don't have a work phone, or I have a work phone that's off now, you can't contact me.
So the link is
I try to be quite boundaried. I try to be quite boundaried, and when I'm not working, make it clear that I'm not working, and colleagues respect that, and that's fine. But when you are in employment and have things like WhatsApp or people even communicate through Instagram and things, it can be quite difficult if you're on holiday. But it depends. If you're enjoying what you're doing and you're liking that, then that's not an issue. But it's difficult.
I guess then it goes back to not instead of actually working from home, but it's actually from working from home. People tend to let their boundaries slide a bit more because they associate their work with their home place. So those boundaries aren't as firm, whereas those boundaries are a lot more cut and crystal clear because we can attach a physical place to them. So if you're working from home, those boundaries slide, and in reality, it's those boundaries which is actually what's going to stop you from burning out. It's that separation of work from life.
There's pros and cons, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, I know we haven't spoken about how to get over burnout, but in my mind, in my own experience, avoiding burnout, getting through it, stopping it in the first place, it's having clear-cut lines of where you're comfortable with work getting over. I know I said it a little bit in the beginning to my own thoughts on burnout, but it's what am I choosing to work and what am I not choosing to work. It's being firm with when you're not choosing to work and knowing that that's also okay as well. And if you repeatedly let that boundary be, knocked on and knocked down by work, it will have an effect on you. Just like in a relationship, if you're not respecting your own boundaries and letting it get to you, things will start to take a bit of a toll. So just like this,
for sure,
having that boundary and respecting it, maybe will stop burnout from happening.
One of several ways I think is being confident in those boundaries and allowing yourself to uphold them. But that's difficult, like in a sales job when you're on a commission and
you need to earn.
That last close needs to happen before the end of the month and you've run out of hours to work in the day. taking that 9 o'clock call, and I'm not
Too.
saying
I'm
that.
guilty of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's how much, and also how agile we can be, and I don't think that we should always. I'm so bad with being agile and dynamic, and sometimes I'm too boundaried and too rigid. And it's like, no, I didn't agree to have a meeting today, therefore you haven't planned it in advance. If I'm not having a meeting today, it's like, okay, you can literally you have the time to have a meeting, just have the meeting.
Yeah.
And it's finding again that balance between knowing, and I guess it's knowing yourself and knowing, and also balancing boundaries with all of these other ways to remedy burnout. So things like
Yeah.
every resource you look at, like I say, NHS, calm, mind, all of these resources. Sleep is the main one. Adequate sleep to reduce burnout, and then to help recover from burnout.
Yeah.
Diet is the second one that's always mentioned.
Yeah.
Positive outlets or
Yeah.
therapeutic outlets, whether that's exercise or creativity, music, crocheting, hobbies, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's number three, is always like finding ways to expend your energy that isn't in this job or
Yeah.
in this productivity. So it allows you to feel that sense of enjoyment from productivity that isn't demand based and demand on income based, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. Then there's loads of, I mean, from what I've seen and read about, there's things like obviously the psychotherapy and adequate diet and sort of different coping skills and ways of rationalizing these things like boundaries and how to do that. But yeah, I think for me and what we're doing well, and speaking to our experience, we've literally seen. I don't think we've. I for myself, I don't think this is the case, but a potential risk of in the future being tired or whatever.
Yeah.
We are working now and actively being like, okay, let's find time, protected time in the future. That's something that we're doing for each other and for ourselves
Yeah.
to potentially mitigate against. We haven't put words to this, but potentially mitigate against burnout or exhaustion or fatigue in the future.
I completely agree. I think it's just aligning your priorities and acting on those, isn't it?
Yep.
If your priority in that moment is to have a good meal, do that.
Yeah.
But if your priority is not, don't do that, and that's fine as well.
Yeah, but it's difficult when sometimes your priorities, like your demands, exceed or supersede, sorry, your priorities,
Well,
aka childcare. Like you have to look
yeah,
after your child,
well, that's how.
or you
But
have to
that's
get.
how. I'm not saying I for completely take it with a pinch of salt that a lot of people can't always prioritize
Yeah,
everything, but that is where burnout would cause. Is if repeatedly you want to prioritize something and it's not happening. That is where burnout comes from.
yeah,
So knowing that allows you to maybe take that more into your own
yeah. Knowing your
hands and into your
power.
control. And as I said into the beginning, choosing what you're doing with your time
Yeah,
and having more agency over your own time.
yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe Maslach knows.
Yeah, maybe Maslach does
Maybe
know.
Hannah Tal know.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of
Research.
research on ways to mitigate. Like I say, the most resources I see are they start with the fundamentals, and that's what is missing. That's why burnout occurs.
Yeah.
So let's restore those things,
Yeah.
those fundamental basics of life: food, sleep,
Yeah.
emotional regulation, time for emotional regulation, and time for pleasure. We need to those things that are missing, which is causing this problem. Let's restore them, and then things will start to slowly build back up again.
Yeah.
And it's also then the balance, the boundaries, those sorts of things, which need practically working out, but you must first recognize that that's happening or a problem to be able to.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying. It's the knowing and knowing your priorities and knowing what you want to prioritize. Not necessarily can always, but at least if you know what you want to potentially, then acknowledge it in the first place is a step.
But often people are in circumstances, as you said, which they might not be able to.
No.
Like with childcare or whatever.
Yeah.
No. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for that.
That's okay.
Burnout.
Yeah.
Let's all try and be kinder on ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give yourself a pat on the back, just to be kind.
In the rat race of life, it's just a case of slowing down.
How weird is it that all of this is created by humans? All of
Our
this,
brains.
our brains have. This is all stemming from us. Like we said, the whole rat race of life. Are humans the only ones to be burnt out? Like, do you think horses get burnt out? I don't think so. Sloths, they definitely don't.
There are many things that are the pitfalls of our heightened or
Cognition.
our superior cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
With all of that
Completely agree. Yeah.
benefit comes all of these issues as well.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't that? all we need in life is like all we actually already have, but we give ourselves all these extra things to try and justify our own reason to be here.
Yeah.
Like working so hard that we actually don't sleep.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Finding.
Funny humans.
Yeah, we are funny.
We are funny, aren't we?
Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, well, Burnout, I think
Yeah.
that was fun for me. Hopefully
Really
you
interesting
enjoyed.
evidence there. I learned a lot there. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I enjoy bringing back my academic side of
course.
things into it, and it's all things that make sense and are not obvious,
Yeah.
but obvious, if that makes sense.
When you say them, it makes sense.
Yeah. And it's just nice adding a bit of, whether that's evidence, theory, whatever, to this.
Yeah.
Because it's fascinating, and I know you find it fascinating
I
as
do
well.
as well. Wow.
Yeah, so let's be kinder to ourselves.
Let's be kind
That
of
sounds so wishy-washy, but
let's all be
look, we don't always have to have a resolution. We're not here to preach, as we always say.
We're just here to connect and reflect, and hopefully give you guys a little bit of a lift wherever you are.
Someone knows his script. Okay, Charlie, tell me, what's your mood boost this week?
Oh, my mood boost. We got some cool patches, didn't we?
Yes.
Marcus, a while ago, ordered these cool patches, which you can sew or iron onto things. We've each put them onto our backpacks, or you put them onto our backpacks under the North Face logo. So, limited edition.
So cool.
They're so cool. We'll put a picture in the Instagram and TikTok carousel for you guys to see. They are unbelievably sick.
They're very
Not
cool.
sick. I don't like using the word. Beautiful. They are artistic.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. So we got those new patches.
Bucket hats pending. Watch this space.
Whoa. Bucket hats pending soon, guys. Want to give away. Watch this space. Ooh. So that was my mood boost. What was your mood boost?
Mine too, if you'll do me the indulgence of having two.
Nope.
Two different people who we met yesterday.
We did.
Street interviews. We met all lovely people yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Two come to mind. Mike, 1,000 days sober. I'm assuming. I think he said from alcohol.
He did.
But,
Yeah, from alcohol, he said. Yeah.
Yes, and he has, in part of his recovery, not recovery, but his process of sobriety, he put energy into his passion, which is just so lovely to see. And he's made a pizza company where he has, he sells pizza across the country in his sourdough pizzas in his Gosney oven.
Legend Mike.
And we are going to try and get down to
Pepper Homies.
Pepper Homie. Again, I mean, you've done it like 3 times in this episode already. But...
No, I have not. I have not voiced correctly.
Pepper Homies. Yes, Pepper Homies. Shout out to Mike and Pepper Homies. We're going to come visit you down in Kent soon. But it's just so nice seeing someone have a positive outlet for their energy and their passion. It's so nice. Likewise, Lexi, she's training to be a nurse, I believe, which is what she told me yesterday. Said, yes, but she'd just come from a recording studio because she's also a musician
on Spotify,
and she is. We'll find her Spotify.
Lexi Grace, it is
Lexi Grace.
Yeah.
And she, in her words, she writes sad girl songs.
I didn't quite know what that meant, but it's quite cool anyway.
And it was just again seeing someone who, full-time nurse or nurse in training, having this passion and being a musician and coming somewhere in Paddington from a recording studio making music. It's just lovely to see. So it was nice meeting them and seeing, like you and I are, outside of work and all these things, just having these passions and
these little passion projects. That's actually what makes humans, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is the little adventures.
Little things that you do as a human.
The little adventures we all work on our own free time.
Little buzzy bees buzzing away.
Busy buzzing bees.
Yes.
Those are our mood boosts. Let us know what your guys' mood boosts are. Every Tuesday,
Please do.
We put on our stories asking you guys for your mood boosts. So let us know.
Please
It'd
let
be good
us
to hear
know.
your guys' mood boosts.
It would be. Anyway,
thank
you for a great episode.
Thank you very much for a great episode. That was lovely.
It was.
Right.
I appreciate that.
No worries. I'm going to do some ASMR whilst we turn off the microphone, yeah?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That really threw me.
Very good.
That's good. Roll.